Hey, hello there, and welcome to Talking with Tony. And annually, I bring in our guest here at this time of the year to break down the NCAA men's basketball tournament field. He'll tell you that his favorite week of the year is Feast Week, but I would think his favorite month of the year is March Madness, is March because of all the madness. Am I right there, Dr. Horton?
Oh, you got that right. And not only, man, with basketball, which is enough, but you think about it. We got the World Baseball Classic finals tonight, which is going to be incredible, with a couple of March Madness play-in games in the first four. And then next week, you got the second round of the tournament and baseball opening day or opening weekend all at one time. I mean, man, you can't ask for any better than that.
And Feast Week usually comes with just everybody playing everybody in college basketball, so many more little tournaments, and then rival football games are right there too. So that's another reason for you to be excited when it's Feast Week time. Look, you mentioned the World Baseball Classic, so I'm going to go ahead. I wasn't going to ask you, but USA or Venezuela, what do you think?
Man, I of course I hope USA. Venezuela just doesn't, they don't quit, man. I mean, they really don't. And what a talented roster. But yeah, my hope, of course, is with the U.S.
Being a Braves fan, what's it like to see Acuna on this stage?
Oh, it's incredible. Did you see him last night? I mean, the whole
Oh
ninth
yeah.
inning, they show him, and he's basically, weeping with joy the whole ninth inning because of the pride that he has in his country. I mean, that's what makes the World Baseball Classic great. It really does.
Is it something you'd rather see annually, or do you think part of the mystique is it doesn't happen annually, that we wait three years in the past at times, 4 years, but just say 3 years?
I think part of the mystique is the 3 years, really. I mean, it might, you don't want to use this phrase. I don't think you might water it down a little bit. If you did it every year. Plus, I don't know that Major League Baseball would be on board with doing it every year because let's be honest, you're taking some of their best players out of the most important time of the year for them, which is getting ready to begin the season healthy. And every year they play it, unfortunately, there are some injuries, some guys. So I don't know that you would ever get the Players Association or Major League Baseball to buy into every year. So 3 years is probably about the best they can do.
Yeah, there's more interest in baseball than hockey, but the World Championships of hockey take place every year, beginning in May, and the NHL playoffs are still going on. In fact, they probably start in late April. And each year, not all the elite players are going to play in the World Championship, but some are still playing in the NHL playoffs. And as it goes on, they're able to add two or three players to the roster. And it is an annual deal. Nothing against President's Cup in golf, but to me, the Ryder Cup is just so much more prestigious than the President's Cup.
Yep.
I do wish that was every year, especially when the Americans lose like this past time, and I'm sitting here having to wait 2 years to hope to get revenge. Of course, these days we never win in Europe, so I may be waiting. I hope to be alive in 4 years. How about that?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, what we were in New York last year, and of course laid an absolute egg. And yeah, you're right. We don't ever play very well in Europe. It doesn't seem like.
Well, I need to let the viewer know for Evan, this is not easy for Evan because we not only ask him for his Final Four, his national champion. But we always throw the hard games at him as well. And I'm talking like 7 versus 10s and 8 versus 9s and all. These are not shoe-ins and easy to pick at all. And then we're going to do that again to him. So if you're ready, let's proceed and we'll begin in the East. How does that sound?
Let's fire away at it.
All right, so the tough matchups before we get your East champion that I want to ask you about begins with Louisville and South Florida. And Louisville is a six here and had a fine season this year. I got to see South Florida twice in person this year, and I was really impressed. And I'm impressed enough here to take the upset there and go
Yep.
with South Florida. Your thoughts on this matchup?
No, that's exactly where I was going, Tony. This is one that I think is prime for an upset in the first round. South Florida, extremely athletic. Of course, Brian Hodgson brought in great players. And what a story, with him and his dad. Never having been able to watch him coach live, who's coming this week. So yeah, I think that's one that you better keep an eye on.
Okay. UCLA is the 7 and Central Florida is the 10. I love the Central Florida coaching staff. I admire these guys. UCLA is kind of a trendy pick right now. They do have some injuries, but they participated in the Big Ten tournament and they did well for themselves there. I think they got a little momentum. I'm going to go with UCLA here. Would not surprise me. We'll be saying a lot of that. Not
Yep.
surprise me if UCF won, but I like the Bruins.
Yeah, I'm with you there. UCLA, they seem to have played better after their coach came under some criticism, rightfully so, a couple weeks ago. But it seems to have rallied them a little bit. And I'm with you on that one. UCLA, I think.
Okay. The 8 versus the 9 here is Ohio State and TCU. And Ohio State is an up and down kind of team. And if I remember correctly, TCU knocked off Florida earlier this year, if I
Oh,
if
yeah.
I remember correctly. If they play to that kind of level, Ohio State won't have a chance. And if Ohio State continues to play inconsistent, Ohio State won't have a chance. Now, look, everybody knows I love Buckeyes, and I'll be pulling for Ohio State. I just feel like TCU to me is the safer pick here because I feel like they bring more of a consistent level of play, and they seem to be a little more predictable. It's not that Ohio State can't win; it's just they drive me nuts with how inconsistent they are.
Yeah, you're right. They do play inconsistently at times. However, this is the first time I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I'm going to take Ohio State just because the tournament is anything but predictable.
You got that right. Now, as far as picking a team to get to Washington D.C. in the finals of the East region, Duke is the number one seed, and but I can't help but think back years ago when Christian Laettner made a shot at the horn against UConn in the East Regional Final. We could potentially have that rematch, and they've met in other postseason moments as well. But Duke and UConn could be playing each other in the Elite Eight. I think that game was the Medellins, I believe. I would have to go back and check that. You've got Michigan State as the 3, Kansas is the 4, and St. John's is the 5. If form held and Kansas played St. John's in that 4 versus 5, who do you like there?
I like St. John's. I was just going to say, Tony, I really do think that it's kind of a disgrace to have St. John's be a 5. Quite honestly, a little bit surprised at that
Big
particular.
East champs.
Big East champs is a 5 seed. You mentioned UConn. UConn's been a little bit up and down, but heck, man, after the last 2 years, what do you expect? I mean, they've been lights out the last couple of years. But I think St. John's is going to be a tough out just because of how physical they are and because they can get up and down with you, or they can just destroy you in the half court.
Maybe they're motivated as well. They didn't get everything out of their team last year as they probably should have. They had a first weekend loss. And let me ask you this: both of those teams in the East region, and they're probably glad they don't have to go out west and all. But is that a disservice to put the two top teams from their conference both in the East region? And when I don't like that.
I don't like it either, but every year someone is upset with where they're placed. And every year we look at the bracket and we say, man, it's tough because those guys could play in the second round or they could play in the Sweet 16, or they should be meeting for the first time potentially in the Final Four or whatever. I just think it happens every year. This year, it just happened to be their year, where the conference as a whole kind of gets done a disservice, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. If it's Duke and St. John's in the round of 16, the 1 versus the 5 there, are you willing to say, hey, I like the St. John's club enough to move them past Duke?
No, I didn't say I like them that much. Duke's been lights out. They really have. And until someone knocks them off in the tournament, I think you gotta go with them. And I'm not saying that just because they're a 1, anything like that. But you look across the year, what they lost 2 games.
Mhm.
I mean, come on, they have played lights out.
In that regional final, when they get to the Sweet 16, being in Washington, D.C., will be a home atmosphere for Duke as well.
Absolutely. And one of the two they lost on the road at North Carolina on a last second shot there from the corner there. So Duke's as good as they come, man.
Okay. And they are. If you look out in Vegas, Duke is the favorite to win the national championship. They're not a favorite by too much, but they're
Yep.
they're the favorite. Can you pick us the team that they'll face for the East Region Championship? Is it UConn and Michigan State or somebody else? Surprise.
I think it may be somebody else. I think you could have a dark horse coming out of there, something that we don't expect. I go back to UConn. UConn's been a little bit more up and down this year than they have in years past. Michigan State's been really good, but can they be consistently good for the next 3 weeks? That's really going to be the question.
I hate getting the cart in front of the horse, that expression. But if UCLA were to beat Central Florida, that next round, the round of 32, would have UCLA and Connecticut facing each other. Two of the greatest traditions, UCLA probably the greatest tradition in college basketball. And then of the last 20 years, you'd have to put UConn right there with Duke, I suppose, for the greatest traditions. That would be for those of us who love the game of basketball, Evan, and we love the history of the game of basketball. That could be a matchup. And if UCLA caught fire
Mhm.
and beat UConn, they could be that team that you're saying, that other team that ends up in that each regional final against Duke.
They could be, and every year there's a team that catches on at the end of the year and builds momentum through their conference tournament. Even sometimes if they don't win the conference tournament, but they build momentum and they carry it into the tournament, they slip up on somebody. UCLA, I don't think they'll necessarily slip up on somebody, but if they get going, they can compete with anybody in this region. They really can. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
After UCLA had those dominant years with John Wooden, and we could name the players, the Lou Alcindors, but we could go on and on, Wilkes, all these guys. There was a year in 1980, Larry Brown was their head coach. Final Four was in Indianapolis. The
Mhm.
Final Four this year is in Indianapolis. UCLA was not expected to be there. Rod Foster and Kiki Vandeweghe were probably their two best players. They made the national championship that game that year against Louisville. UCLA just might be that kind of team that makes that run to the final eight. When you said that, kind of got my thoughts when you said, "No, I think it could be somebody else." They might be looking at themselves and saying, "Hey, why not us?"
It very well could be, and they could be the team that nobody's paying attention to, that ends up playing in the the second weekend and then on to the third weekend.
Let's go to the South Regional. Okay, now look, the South Regional finals are going to be taking place in Houston. The committee has a sense of humor here as well because the Gators are number one and Houston's number two. They played for the national championship last year. And the Gators, I felt like, well, to be honest with you, I felt like they could have got beat by Connecticut. They should have got beat by Texas Tech. And
Mm-hmm.
Houston should have beat them in the national championship game. But none of those things happened to Florida's credit. You have Illinois the three, Nebraska the four, and Vandy the five. So let's let that marinate there just for a minute while we ask you the two toughest matchups I can think of. And that's Clemson versus Iowa, the 8-9. I love Iowa in this game. I could be wrong. Clemson had an impressive ACC tournament victory over North Carolina, but I like the Hawkeyes here.
Yeah, let's be honest. They had an impressive ACC tournament victory over North Carolina, uninjured North Carolina. There's been some injuries there. I do like Iowa myself. Um, that's another great game to watch, though.
Okay, yeah, it is. Before we get to that Toyota Center in Houston, I want to ask about Texas A&M, who started out fabulous, on fire especially in the SEC play this year. They've garnered the 10 seed, and St. Mary's has the 7 seed. How do you see this contest?
Man, I don't know Bucky Ball against St. Mary's. That's going to be it's a tough matchup, I think, for Texas A&M. I like St. Mary's.
Okay, so you like the 7 St. Mary's and the 9 Iowa in those two matchups, and people do. Why? But once again, I'm not giving him like the 2 versus the 15 here to predict. We're not giving him something easy in the wheelhouse. He's having to earn these, and these are hard, hard. We get to the regional finals. I mentioned they're in Houston. It would be terrible if Houston's not in that Elite Eight game because it's something about Houston basketball. They're not supported to the level that they need to be supported to. I went to the Final Four last year. Houston to San Antonio is not that far of a trip, and Houston didn't have any more fans there than anybody else. In fact, they had less fans there than Auburn and Florida. To be honest with you, but when they're playing at Houston, they're playing at the Toyota Center. I think that would be different. Do they get to the Elite Eight? That means a probable victory over Illinois in the round of 16 and no stumbles prior to that.
I think they do, Tony. They gave Arizona once again all they wanted this past Saturday night.
After
Um,
falling well behind, too.
Yeah, I mean they did. So this Houston team, they know how to win. They're one thing they're going to do. They're going to play defense like no tomorrow. They're going to be as aggressive as they can possibly be. That's a trademark of Kelvin Sampson teams all the way back to the '90s, for goodness sakes, when he was at Washington State way back in the day. So I do like them to be there. I do kind of question if Florida did not lose to Vanderbilt last Saturday, does the committee still have that sense of humor and put these guys back together again, or did that really shift things around to where Florida ended up in the South region with a potential rematch with Houston. A lot of things going on there for sure.
I think the second part there, I think it was the law. I think that's what set this up.
Yeah,
And that's why Houston's sitting on that number two. And let's be honest, is there really a difference in being the number one and number two seed?
no, I mean no. You're elite. If you're a one or a two seed, you're an elite basketball team. Quite honestly, the only thing
You
that may be different is where they place you.
Nebraska is the four seed here, and they've had a wonderful season. It's been really good to see. I think Hoiberg is a great coach. You saw Vanderbilt up close and personal. How impressive were they in person, and would they be too physical for Nebraska?
Man, Vandy shot the lights out, and they were certainly physical. I forget his name, but the point guard, I just love the point guard. He gets them going.
They are a physical team.
Uh,
I would take Vanderbilt in that matchup if four played five there.
Yeah, I mean, I got my SEC bias has to show there a little bit, especially after watching Vandy play live a couple of times last week. I really, it's hard for me to go against Vandy after seeing what they did to a solid, incredible Florida team, who just their length just bothers people, and Vandy just took the game right to them in the semifinals on Saturday. So yeah, I'm not going
If
against Vandy.
if Vanderbilt takes on Florida in the Sweet 16, the rematch, is this good for Florida to face the same team that they, I don't want to say humiliated. It got away from them, certainly, and it was comfortable for Vanderbilt. But who would have the edge there?
I would think Florida. I wouldn't want to play Florida again if I'm Vanderbilt, and I honestly wouldn't want to play Florida if I'm anybody else. I mean, they reeled off what 15, 16 in a row during
Hmm.
conference play, playing as good as anybody in the country there for a while until they had that slip up last Saturday. So I was telling somebody at the tournament last Saturday, sometimes the best thing that can happen. It was a Florida fan. I said the best thing that can happen is what is happening right now, because it'll reset you, recenter you, and now you're ready to go and make that run. So nobody likes to lose, but it could be a huge blessing in disguise for them.
Now, we both feel that way when a team is undefeated. It's almost like a blessing to get that loss and have that reset. You have the gate. It sounds like you have the Gators in your South region.
Yeah, I got them. I got them making a deep run.
Well, we're about to find out how deep because I'm going to go ahead and put you to the spot here. If these teams meet up in the Final Four, if it's due in Florida, who do you like?
And hard to repeat, quite honestly. And I go back to what I said about Duke. Florida's been great all year, but I got to see somebody really, really do it to Duke. Until they come out and lay an egg, I'm not going against Duke. As much as it pains me to say that, I've never
Right.
been a huge Duke fan, but I know good basketball when I see it, and they have been as consistent as anyone in the country, and they can beat you multiple ways.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Growing up as a Carolina fan and growing up in Carolina, I liked Duke a whole lot more when Bill Foster was the head coach before Mike Krzyzewski became the head coach. Now, Bill Foster took them to a national championship game against Kentucky. They lost 94 to 88 in St. Louis in 1978. But then when Krzyzewski got there and he started building it, he never lost it. Once he started building, he had all those trips to the Final Four consecutively, like where Greg Kuback played in four consecutive Final Fours. And once they won a national championship in '91 against Michigan, they became the team and the program. So I don't pull for them. I liked them when they had when I was a little guy. They had Mike Jaminski and Jim Spanarkel and Gene Banks and later Vince Taylor. They're too good now. They weren't as good then. We'll go to the Midwest region, Kentucky. And Santa Clara, Kentucky had a couple of nice wins in the SEC tournament. I thought they'd give Florida a better game than they did, and I thought they would get their Big Blue Nation involved in the crowd. But Florida was far better. Santa Clara team now. This team's no joke. This is a good conference. It gives you Santa Clara, Gonzaga, and St. Mary's. The odds makers are paying attention to it as well. Kentucky's only favored by 4 or 5 points. This has potential upset.
Yeah, this has all the makings of one of those first round upsets that you see every single year. Kentucky did play a little bit better in the tournament. Florida's length really bothered them, or at least really seemed to bother them on Friday night there. I can't be an SEC homer, and Kentucky has underachieved, in my opinion, all year, especially if the numbers that they are reported to have paid for that roster are accurate. So I'm going with Santa Clara.
Man, does the number you're hearing like 22 million? Is that in
That's right.
yeah, that is insane that they little return that they've got for that investment. Um, Jimmy Dykes trying to make excuses on the broadcast saying you Kentucky fans need to remember you won 2 games. You know, he's really taking up for his guy Pope, and Dykes did of course did some coaching as well, not just broadcasting. So I can see him but I wonder how much trouble Pope is in not getting the results if they don't do something in here in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, not to get us off on a tangent here, but this thing is more like professional basketball than ever. And there's a reason that the NBA every single night, you better be ready because you can get beaten every single night. I think I think it's a stretch to say that Pope hasn't done a good job or you know that they've underachieved. I think we're just now seeing more parity than ever.
Mm.
And the money magnifies things. But I don't know that you're going to go back to the days where you're just automatically, because you have Big Blue on, you're automatically going to be in the conference championship conversation. You're going to have up years and down years because of the parity and the money that's there.
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely right. A game that has a lot of interest in our area will be Georgia returning the NCAA basketball tournament against St. Louis. I know Hap Hines will be watching, so I don't know if that means you have to take UGA. I'm curious to see. I think St. Louis is a good team. Their coach is going to be sought after when the season is over. But I like the Bulldogs here.
Yeah, I like the Bulldogs. I've seen them play live a couple of times. They like to push the ball up and down the floor, and I'm not going to go against them. My friend Hap he'd be disappointed in me if I did. So let's go with the Dogs in that one.
The regional finals will take place in Chicago. Michigan is the number 1 seed. Before we get there, I want to ask you something potential. If this is a hard region for me.
Mhm.
In my opinion, this is the toughest regional because I see 6 teams that can win this region. Michigan, Iowa State, Virginia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Texas Tech. Now, Alabama, we got some issues with right now. And it doesn't look like we're going to have Aiden Holloway playing for the Crimson Tide.
Right.
Um, I don't know what that does to them because he's a heck of a player. But first of all, I want to say that Alabama's overcome obstacles and things with their program in the past with the Brandon Miller situation. And I think they have depth. I know he'll be missed, but I don't think it hurts. I don't think they lose a game because they don't have him. Is that fair to say?
Well, I don't know that they lose a game because they don't have him, even though I think he is their second leading scorer. But if they give the effort that they gave in the first half in the SEC tournament on Friday night, they will go home on Friday afternoon in the NCAA tournament. The effort was just, and Nate Oates said it in the post game press conference. It was not up to par. And of course, he said he didn't feel that he did enough to get them ready to give the type of effort that they needed to play winning basketball. You can, if you get that type of effort, it doesn't matter who you have or who you don't have. I do think, sometimes teams, from a psychological standpoint, something happens to a guy, they lose him for whatever reason. The other guys can rally. I hope for them that happens and they can make a little bit of a run, but they got to get their effort straightened out.
If they're in the Sweet 16 and they're playing Texas Tech, do you like Bama to move on past? Well, they would be playing Michigan. I'm sorry, in the Sweet 16, they would be face. Want to make yeah, I got that right. They'd face Texas Tech in the round of 32. You like Bama there?
I don't, based on their body of work, I just don't. They've been too inconsistent all year, and I hate to be overly critical, but I haven't seen them be physical enough all year, quite honestly.
Did they rely too much on the 3-point shot?
I mean, that's their style. I don't know that it's a great thing when you're making them. But I just haven't, from the start this year, they haven't rebounded the ball very well,
No.
consistently. So I think that's going to get them at some point. And look, let's be honest. If they do slip by Texas Tech, who's beating Michigan?
Well, I hope no one because Michigan is my national champion. But
Yeah.
oh, oh,
Oh,
I like Johnson at Marez Johnson, Mara. I can't even say his Yaxel Lindenberg. I think is how he said. I mean, this is a team. His leading scorer is 15 points. I love that. When you have 14.8 in leading scorer for Michigan, I love that balance. You know, Marez Johnson comes in with 14, and he's got a deep bench, and I think the guy can flat out coach. I love how often they change their defense too. When I watch them on the defensive side, they just don't stay in the same set. So I've got Michigan obviously to the Final Four and beyond. It sounds like you got the Wolverines to the Final Four.
I do. I do.
And we talk about home crowds. Michigan will have that home crowd in Chicago if they make the round of 16 and Elite Eight.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it's like what we said with Duke. Somebody's got to show us they can beat them. So, I'm riding with them until someone does.
Okay, the West, it's time to predict the West, and I'm going to have you do some really difficult games. This one's the most difficult because we don't even know who Brigham Young is going to be playing right now as we film this. They're waiting on the winner of NC State and Texas. And Brigham Young is the sixth seed. In case you're new to college basketball, they have to play Thursday, Saturday because they're not allowed to play on Sunday. So whenever they make the NCAA tournament field, they have to start play on Thursday. Uh, do you like NC State or Texas in that game? And then whoever you have coming out of that, how do you think they do against the Cougars?
I like Texas. That's my SEC bias coming in. I do think the game's going to be a war. The only pause that I have, this is one that could be right for an upset. I saw Brigham Young play UCF earlier this year. UCF beat
Hmm.
them on the road. It was right after BYU had lost their leading scorer to a torn ACL. So I just wonder when we get into the tournament how much the loss of their best player continues to really cause them some issues. So it's one that could be ripe for an upset. With that being said, though, I'm not going to pick the upset. I'm going to go with BYU.
I like that play. Miami of Florida and Missouri. And this is interesting. This is to me is Miami's got a good basketball team. That Louisville versus Miami game in the ACC tournament was played at a high level. And then
Yep.
you've talked a lot about the SEC schools. Missouri, Kentucky. Missouri was right there. They'd get down 10 or 11. They'd come back within two or three. They never stopped playing. And they are so much better than they have been in the last couple of years. I'm glad they're in the tournament and have the opportunity to show what they can show. This to me is phenomenal matchup right here.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I really thought a lot of what Miami did last weekend. I've seen Missouri 3 or 4 times this year. I mean, they beat Alabama like a drum earlier. They played Arkansas to overtime earlier this year. They can score with anybody. They're physical. This is a coin flip to me, quite honestly. It's just one of the most difficult games I think to pick of the first round. Um, I'm going to go with Miami
Okay.
simply because, Tony, I think they're playing better right now.
Fair. And they could have played a month ago, and you might feel differently. You might
That's
like
right.
Missouri in this spot.
Now,
Okay,
I'm guaranteed
Villanova
to
and
be
you.
wrong. I'm guaranteed to be
Dude,
wrong, by the way. Okay.
nah, he's better. He gives himself credit for Villanova and Utah State. I'm going with Utah State here, and for nothing else, 5 or 6 years ago, after Villanova had won the national championship, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, the first round the next year they're playing they're one seed and they're playing like Long Island of New York or something, and it's at halftime, and they're losing. And I'm at the Orioles Phillies spring training game in Sarasota, Florida. And now, we think Orioles and Phillies. You got to think, man, everybody is up north. That Philly area fans from both of those teams, they all love Villanova. The people there, we were watching pitchers warm up, and they were all looking on their cell phones to get updates. I'm telling you, Evan, they were losing their minds that Villanova was losing at halftime. Now Villanova went on to win that game, but then Wisconsin upset them in the next round on Saturday afternoon. I want those same people to be losing their minds when they're checking the cell phones again this time. I'm going with Utah State. In all seriousness, I was able to see Utah State play earlier this year against Memphis. Utah State is a fine basketball team. I always think that Mountain West Conference is better than they get credit 4 with San Diego State, and San Diego State did make the national championship game a couple of years ago. And you've got New Mexico, who's a really solid team. It's in the NIT this year. Colorado State was good. Boise State. So I always am a Mountain West fan. Believe they don't get the credit that they deserve. And this is where I look for Utah State to win this game.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I haven't watched either one of them this year. I haven't seen Villanova play and haven't seen Utah State. So I tell you what, if you're going with Utah State, I'm going with them too.
I appreciate that support. Okay, I got to ask you if Arkansas and Wisconsin meet each other in the 4-5 game, that's a whole lot of red. You like the Razorbacks there?
It's a whole lot of red. I tell you who I do like. I like Darius Acuff. Um,
Yeah, boy.
so um, just because of him and because of the way I saw Arkansas play last weekend, the way Calipari had them ready to roll, I am going to go with Arkansas on that one.
Okay. So you go with Arkansas there, and I got to ask you about Arizona's got Braden Burries is a fine player. Jaden Bradley was the Big 12 Player of the Year with about 5 assists a game, about 14 points a game. Pete, I believe is how you say his name. And I'm not great with the two stud foreigners' names, Krivas and Kachikhanov, I think. But Arizona is just absolutely loaded. They are the 1 seed, and they are deserving. Would enough SEC bias get in the way there to have them knocked off, or do you see them cutting down the nets in San Jose?
I see them cutting down the nets in San Jose. I mean, I've been impressed with them all year. I was more impressed with them after that loss to Kansas, though, because the coach basically comes into the film room or comes into the press room after the game and says, "Hey, we flush it. I love my team more now than I did before we started the game tonight." And then they went back, lost another game, I think to Texas Tech or somebody, a couple weeks later. I forget who it was. And they're just primed to do this thing. They really are. However, with all that being said, the A1 seed is not going to make the Final Four.
Oh, there'll be upsets. And can I just say real quick, like Purdue has got a wealth of experience on their team. They're finally playing now like we expected them to play all year long because they didn't. They ended up being, I believe, the 7th seed in the Big Ten tournament, which was kind of embarrassing for the team that a lot of people thought was the best team coming in. And you got people like Fletcher Lohr and Braden Smith, and I mean, people who've been two of these kids started in Final Four, so they have legitimate experience from a couple years ago. And if they could make the Final Four and get there past Arizona, they'd be playing in Indianapolis in the Final Four. That's home basically for to West Lafayette. They've got an awful lot to play for.
Oh, got a ton to play for and got one of the best coaches, around. I mean, Matt Painter does an incredible job. However, Zach Agney ain't walking through that door.
No, he's not. He's with the Grizzlies, I believe, even though he may be hurt right now. But yeah, he's not. You're right. He's not. He's not walking through that door. And Arizona has so many players. They just have. But you made a wonderful point. There's going to be somebody besides number 1 seeds going to Indianapolis. So we've looked at the field and we've talked about it, and that it could very well be Arizona because that region is stacked, and it's probably more stacked than even the one I said I felt like was the hardest. And but the reason I said that I felt like the Midwest was because I saw more teams potentially winning versus some of the regions I see like 3 teams winning. I could see 6 teams winning in the Midwest. But if you're looking at like 1 and 2 seeds, I'd rather be Michigan if they had to face the 2 seed in Iowa State versus being Arizona having to face either Purdue or Gonzaga in the Elite Eight game.
Right, right, no doubt. And I mean, look, you mentioned Iowa State. What's stopping a team like Iowa State from making a run? They've been incredible all year. Michigan State, if they get on a roll, they can make a run and make life hard on people. Every one of these regions has a team or two in it that are from a 4 seed to a 6 seed that could mess around and end up in the Final Four. I mean, they really could. I mean, there's going to be some lights out basketball that gets played starting tonight. I think it's tonight, Texas and NC State, either tonight or
Hmm.
tomorrow night. Going to be
That's
incredible
tonight.
basketball, man. Just incredible. So that's why I say I'm guaranteed to be wrong because it's not going to go. It never does go according to the so-called script.
You know, it's just made me think of this when you said why not Iowa State. I've become dear friends with some folks that are Iowa State alums, and well, they're part Iowa State and they're part Oregon. And I had so much success with my book, 6 Weeks this summer. So many people have got it. Your Alabama grad, United States Center, Katie Britt, another United States Center, and Tommy Tuberville was a great football coach at Auburn. Major League Hall of Fame baseball players, players that I loved like David Cone, Heisman Trophy finalist Julian Sayin of Ohio State, and about 15 other Buckeyes, but it's hearing from people that are just like you. I say common people like you and I, and there's this family that is split, Oregon and Iowa State, and they invited me to go to the college football playoff game between Oregon and Indiana with them because it was in Atlanta and they knew I lived close. They didn't realize at the time I had a broken leg and a broken ankle and couldn't go. But I've got a feeling they end up in that Final Four. They're going to reach out to me again and say, "Hey, come join us in Indianapolis," because they go to everything, whether
Awesome.
it's Oregon or Iowa State. They're headed to see Iowa State's first two games this weekend. So part of me, even though I'm picking Michigan to win it all, part of me is kind of hoping the Cyclones get there too, and I may get to go to another Final Four.
That's right. That'll be awesome. That'll be awesome if they do.
All
That'll
right,
be
so
fun.
well, we have to ask you that Final Four matchup if it is, and I guess do I ask you Michigan and Arizona, even though they're both the top seeds there? Is that what I?
I either Michigan, Arizona, oh Duke, man. How do we? Give me Arizona. Give me Arizona.
Arizona to cut down the nets
Give me
over Duke?
Arizona. Yep.
And I'll take Michigan to cut down the nets over Houston. And I'll go with a two seed there just because Evan's right. Not every one seed's going to go. Probably what's going to happen is Florida's going to be the only one seed that goes and the other ones don't, since I'm taking a two seed in Houston. That'll be the luck, right?
That'll be the luck for sure. But hey, look, last weekend's just evidence. You just never know. I would have thought Florida was just going to walk through the SEC tournament last weekend as good as they were playing, and lo and behold, they end up getting beat by 17 Saturday. So you just never know.
And it might benefit them. They might be a little fresher. I have to wrap it up, but I want to tell Evan, I always enjoy this time of the year, and thank you so much for doing it again.
All right, I look forward to your text about every pick of mine that goes sideways over the course of the next 3 weeks or so. I can't wait to see them.
I'm giving you checks for Jake Barton and for Evan Horton. I'm Tony Jones. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with Tony.
Thanks, guys.